Well, Joseph, thank you so much for being with me tonight. This is our first of, God willing, many sessions that we plan on having. And speaking with Jacqueline yesterday, we were talking about starting this new, I don't know if it's a podcast, if it's just, conversations with parishioners. But what we decided we're going to dub the name for now is OLPH's Family of Faith Pew Talks with Parishioners. So you are our
Sounds
first
good.
guest tonight. Thank you so
Oh,
much for being with us.
I'm honored.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're excited to have you. Um, I'd mentioned that we're going to be hopefully conducting this going forward, but I'm super excited about conducting this interview with you because more than anything, it's my understanding that you have some experience with Halloween as far as some knowledge that I think would be great to share with everyone. I know for me personally, growing up, it was kind of one of those gray areas, right? That yeah, I'm Catholic, but I don't know that I can really celebrate Halloween without being, chastised by others. And, being Hispanic, that's a whole different, realm in itself. So I was
Sure.
really hoping that you might be able to share some of your valuable insight with us and just help bring clarity more than anything. Before we do go into any of that, though, just because I know a little bit of how our paths have crossed over the years, but I'm sure other parishioners would like to know a little bit more about you. So why don't you maybe share with us a little bit about yourself and, how long you've been a parishioner with OLPH?
Okay. So I've been a parishioner, I think, since 2015.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, Jacqueline's my wife. She's very well known throughout the parish. And let's see, we have 6 children, and they're involved in different ministries, choir, altar server. And I have been a catechist for a few years. I've also been involved with CYO as a board member and as a coach.
Awesome. I think that's where our paths crossed around
Oh, that's right.
that
That's right.
time. Yeah, CYO. So yeah, we've been blessed to just share similar activities with the kids and stuff. So that's awesome. But man, so 2015, giving you plenty of time to get your feet wet in many areas in the church and get to know
Right.
many families, right?
That's right. That's right. Yes, it's a wonderful community. We're very blessed to be a part of it.
Oh yes, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we're going to dive into this. Okay, I've got a
Okay.
couple of questions for you.
Sure.
The first question that I have, and this is more general, I guess, but
Mhm.
is it okay as a Catholic to celebrate Halloween? What's your take on that, Joseph?
Yes, it is because Halloween is a Catholic holiday, and it's interesting. Growing up as a kid, I I never ran into anyone, expressing anything otherwise. It really wasn't until I was older that I started becoming aware that people had these objections, and that's really what led me to research the topic more, to really find out, what are the roots and what really is going on.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm glad to hear that. I'm sure others will be relieved to hear that as well. And being that you said that you've done some research, you know that now I'm going to ask you about that research.
Well,
So,
sure.
what are the origins of Halloween, or what have you found with your research?
Sure. Well, first, right off the bat, and I knew this, as a child, that the word Halloween comes from All Hallows Eve. So it literally is the eve of All Hallows, hallow being an old term for holy or saint.
Mhm.
And so, I always knew it was the eve of All Saints Day. And, the next day we go to church and we visit cemeteries and all that goes along with it.
Not to
And
forget, Holy Day of Obligation, right?
that's right. That's the most important. The most important way to celebrate Halloween, or um, Hallowtide, as it's been, that was a common term over the years to refer to the 3 days of Halloween, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day. And as we talk, I think it's important to kind of think of those collectively. And I think, a lot of things make sense when you think of them as really part of one holiday.
Right. Okay, so it's all connected, is what you're
Right. That's
saying, right?
that's that's right. That's right.
So very similar to maybe some of the other holy days of obligation that we have, like Easter or the Triduum or something of that
Right, sure. And so you know, the church has a history of celebrating vigils, which is, the evening before a feast day.
nature.
And
Right.
and Sundays and solemnities now, we start celebrating the evening before, and you can see this with vigil masses. We have Saturday evening mass, we have Christmas Eve mass, and in the liturgy of the hours, we start celebrating with vespers the evening before,
Right.
and so and that goes all the way back to our Jewish roots of in Judaism, a day begins at sundown and goes sundown to sundown, rather than midnight to midnight as we do it here. And so as Catholics, we're basically celebrating Sundays and important feast days for a day and a half. And so
Okay.
over the years, many customs have sprung from vigils, and of course, we're probably all familiar with Christmas Eve traditions,
Right.
where there's going caroling, or just feasting and merriment that takes place
Right.
as you're beginning the Christmas season, and that's really where celebrating Halloween comes from.
Okay. I like that. So we're celebrating the day before All Saints Day. It's in preparation for All Saints Day.
That's right. That's right. So we're starting to celebrate All Saints Day the evening before, and so Halloween doesn't exist without All Saints Day.
Right. Exactly.
Just like Christmas Eve doesn't exist without
Without
Christmas Day.
exactly. No, that's perfect. I love that. And I think that the more that we think of it that way, like you said, right, it's all tied together, because it's All Hallows Eve, then we have All
Right.
Saints Day, and then what follows? We have All Souls Day, right? Which I
Right.
know that's
Right.
something huge that we, the Hispanic community and the Latino community
Sure.
celebrate, is Dia de los
Mhm.
Muertos. Right? I'm wearing the shirt
Right.
to represent.
Oh, there
So,
you go.
but and that it kind of ties into, I guess, some other questions that I had that I know I didn't send these to you ahead of time, but with some of the research that I was doing, Joseph,
Mhm.
with regards to Halloween, they were talking about how with Halloween, it was almost like it was a pagan holiday before, kind of like a fall festival. And I don't know, I
Mhm.
found some research that I don't even want to go into, right?
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it was almost like it was the church trying to cover up a pagan holiday. But
Mhm.
no, based on the research that you found, didn't you find something that goes much further back than that?
Sure. Well, and if you go online and you Google Halloween, you'll find all sorts of things.
Oh, yes.
And it's yeah, and it's very common, to think that it was a pagan holiday and that's where it started, and then we just kind of try to adapt it to Christianity. And what's really interesting is if you read scholarly work, and look at professional historians and go back to the research that they've done, you really find that's not the case.
Right.
So if we go back to the beginning, so the early Christians celebrated and venerated the martyrs on the anniversary of their death or their martyrdom,
Mm-hmm.
and then and we have records of that going back at least to the second century.
Okay.
And over time, as the number of martyrs and saints increased, you can go back to really, I believe the fourth century is the first written account we have of All Saints Day being celebrated, and it was initially celebrated around the Easter season. It was the Sunday after Pentecost was an early
Okay.
date for it, and then it was celebrated in May, and it makes sense because ultimately we're celebrating Christ's victory over death, and
Right.
so you can see that the closer it is to Easter. And then in the 8th century, the celebration was moved to November 1st to coincide with the dedication of All Saints Chapel in Rome.
Oh, okay.
And then sometime not too much longer after that, I forget the date exactly, but All Souls Day was implemented on November 2nd.
Wow. Okay.
And then a lot of the customs that we tend to associate with Halloween really date back to the Middle Ages, in Europe, and things like taking food to the cemetery, and
Mm-hmm.
having processions in the cemetery, ringing bells, praying, gathering as a group and praying for the dead, decorating tombstones. All of that really goes back to Middle Age Europe.
Okay.
And
So I
then,
know that I had seen a video. I was actually watching an interview today, and that's something that the priest, I cannot remember his name, was talking about how back in those times in Middle Europe and in the Middle Ages that they would go door to door asking for treats in exchange
yes,
for prayers, right?
yes. So that's one of the customs. They call it souling. They would go from door to door asking for a soul cake
Mhm.
or beer or some treat. And in exchange, they would pray for the deceased members of that family. And what you find is not only All Saints, but you find this during the Christmas season and other important feast days. This tradition of going house to house, and caroling is very similar. Or I don't know if you've heard of the mummers,
Never
but
heard of that.
so it's currently still popular in Philadelphia, and but it was popular in Europe in the Middle Ages, going house to house um, and putting on a short play or a skit in exchange for beer or food. And
That's
so
almost no different than our Las Posadas that we do.
that's right. That's right. And in fact, when we're in town for Christmas, we'll go caroling in our neighborhood. And it always strikes me how similar it is to trick or treating, because we go to the same houses, see the same neighbors, and almost every time that we sing for the neighbors, they give us cookies or some treat. So you
Right.
can really see the similarities there.
Wow, and I'm so glad that you shared that because I think that's what we need to continue to look for, right? I mean, we have such
Mhm.
a rich faith that we
Right.
need to be able to draw from our faith and understand the history. Like you said, you can go online and you can find just about anything. I mean, I could be
Right.
looking for a review on a restaurant and it could be the worst review. That's one person's opinions. But when we
Right.
go back and we look for the scholarly work, we look for God's work in,
Mhm.
his inspired word and everything. I mean, that changes everything that we're looking into. So,
Yeah.
man, I really appreciate all of that, Joseph. Now, I do have a question for you.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if you have, maybe some better direction on this, but it's been my experience, like I told you, in the Hispanic community, that it's extremely frowned upon to celebrate
Mhm.
or participate in Halloween. Even trying to conduct my own research, it's been almost impossible to find a priest that,
Mhm.
encourages a celebration of Halloween. Now, based on everything that we talked about, why wouldn't we celebrate it, right? It's a
It-
celebration of All Saints Day. We're kicking that off early in conjunction with praying for the souls of those that have passed, praying with saints and asking for their intercession for us. um I don't know, is there any information that you might be able to share that could provide more insight for the Hispanic or the Latino community? Maybe isn't it down in Latin America or Southern America that they celebrate Carnival? Isn't that something kind of like
oh,
with tied to Lent or something, right?
oh, right. So yeah, and there are a lot of similarities between Halloween and Mardi Gras. So yes, in Brazil, Carnival is very popular, and of course in New Orleans, where I grew up, Mardi Gras is the last day of the carnival season,
Okay.
and you'll find in other Catholic countries, they'll have some sort of a most of them have some sort of a celebration on the day before Ash Wednesday, and it goes by different names. And Mardi Gras is a French term. There's Shrove Tuesday,
Mhm.
Carnival, but really they're all just different cultural manifestations of the same event.
Okay.
And my research into Halloween and Hallowtide, All Saints and All Souls, I've read a good bit about the Day of the Dead as well, and that's the way I see it. Is the Day of the Dead is the Mexican version of celebrating All Saints and All Souls.
Hmm.
Uh, in America, we it tends to be more secularized. So it's what tends to happen, I think, with a lot of our holidays is we tend to latch on to the fun aspects of it and maybe let the religious aspects of it slip away. And so, and when that happens, when you take God out of something, then it completely loses its meaning. And then you have, our secular understanding of Halloween, or of not really knowing what to make of it.
Right.
Once you strip out that religious component of it. And I will say that I think with the Day of the Dead, there's been a better, a better job of holding on to the religious aspects. I think they're more obvious when you look at Day of the Dead than Halloween per se.
I see.
But going back to, it's interesting to compare the two, because our Halloween celebrations, we have skeletons and ghosts and scary things, and of course Day of the Dead has sugar skulls and lots of skeletons, and
right.
the part of the history of dressing up in costumes, and particularly things like skeletons and maybe scary costumes, is to mock death. As we can say with St. Paul, death, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? Because Christ conquered death, and so we don't have to fear it, because we know it's not the end. And I think in our secular Halloween, we've kind of lost that meaning. I think you can see that a little more clearly in the Day of the Dead. You can see that sense of mockery, that sense of frivolity, that death doesn't have any power over us anymore.
That's so interesting that you say that, because until just now, I had never thought of it that way. And you're absolutely right. Being a cradle Catholic myself, I will say that I grew up going to church. I just had this conversation with the kids, actually, and that's why I'm laughing. Just because I grew up going to church didn't mean that I knew everything about the faith.
Sure.
Right. And so there is still so much learning. I think that's one thing that everybody can agree on. Our journey on when it comes to our faith is never ending. We're always learning. We're always trying to grow and trying to understand. But one thing that I told them, I said, growing up as a kid, I feared death. Why? Because I didn't know. I didn't understand that, Easter was truly about God sending his son to conquer death, to be resurrected, to, be our savior. And it wasn't until I took the time as I got older to really understand all of that it has made a difference. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, our kids are, light years ahead of where I was at their age, which is awesome. But it's exciting to see that we can continue to share our faith and continue to, encourage these celebrations and to grow. And like you said, it's very important to make sure that we keep God at the center of all of this, because if we take God out, then at that point, Halloween becomes the same as, Christmas with Santa Claus. Like, why would we celebrate Christmas and then not celebrate Halloween? It becomes confusing, right?
Right. And that's a great point. Sadly, you see that with Christmas, where so much of the focus is on, for some anyways, on presents, either getting or giving, or it's on reindeer or elves, that sort of thing, which, really I think can detract a lot from the true meaning.
Absolutely. Well, Joseph, the only other question that I had for you was if there was anything that I didn't ask you that you were hoping I would ask you that maybe you might like to share as an additional piece of information.
Well, it's, I think it's very important to, to honor these days, and we hinted on it, or we said it earlier. The most important thing is to go to church, and I think it's important to visit cemeteries, even if you don't, go all out and decorate them and do the different things, even just to visit them and pray for the deceased members of your family, of the parish, or really of everyone there. And another aspect why I say it's good to think of these days together, because we have All Saints Days specifically for honoring the saints that are in heaven, and then All Souls Day is praying for those in purgatory. But of course, we don't know, other than the canonized saints. If you walk into a cemetery, chances are some of those are in heaven, some of those in purgatory. So,
Right.
I think, so we try to go to the cemetery on both All Saints Day and All Souls Day.
Oh, wow.
And one more point is, this is something that struck me a couple of years ago. On Halloween, as you go from house to house, you see a lot of fake tombstones,
Right.
decorations, and they're supposed to be spooky. And then I love to go to the All Souls Day mass in the cemetery, because it's such a contrast, because you see the spookiness of the fake tombstones, and then you see Father going around and blessing the real tombstone, and it's just such a beautiful thing. And the prayers that we say in the All Souls Day mass, such a juxtaposition between the spooky fake stuff and then the real beautiful stuff.
Man, that's awesome. That's priceless. Thank you for sharing that, because you're absolutely right. Until we experience it, until we start to live it and see it, are we able to, it's almost like the veil removed, right? Like until
Mhm.
we lift up the veil and we really realize what it is, that this is, when we put God at the center of everything, he's going to show us the beauty in all of this. So that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Joseph, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know that you are a wealth of knowledge between you and Jacqueline, so don't be surprised when I come knocking again for another interview. But I really, again, just thank you so much. I really appreciate y'all. I know that it's kind of late in the evening, but I also understand that sometimes that's what we have to do, put the kids to bed, do what we got to
Sometimes
do.
that's when the best work gets done.
Yes, absolutely. We all have a good night. Thank you so much for everything.